So I guess we can get started whenever, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So let's get started. All right. So for everybody watching, I am excited to be chatting today with Councilwoman McKenzie, who is the councilwoman representing Ward 1 of College Park, Georgia. And there's been a lot going on in College Park. And somehow a kid's climbing wall got caught in the middle of the city's politics. And as one of the sitting council members, I wanted to sit down with you in hopes of bridging that gap of knowledge between your duties and your commitment to your city and what this rock climbing wall could positively bring to College Park's community. So to start things off, perhaps you can just tell people a little bit more about who you are and exactly what your job title entails as it pertains to College Park and this rock wall.
All righty. Well, Kai, it's great to be here with you, and thank you for the opportunity to share. I am Jamel McKenzie. I'm the councilwoman for Ward One in the city of College Park, and Ward One is a very active ward. We like to have our voice heard. I think that we're concerned about everything that goes on in the city of College Park. And so, yeah, I got involved in this rock wall project. And basically, what happens is the city manager is actually he's the executive over the city. He pretty much is the person that runs the city of College Park, and he has the ability to make decisions without the involvement of council. So basically, he can make a decision to, he could have made a decision to do something about the rock wall. And so there's certain things that get done in the city that don't come to council. So when this issue first happened in the city, it was a discussion between the councilwoman for the Ward 3 of the city, where the actual rock climbing wall is located, and the city manager. At that point, as a council member, I didn't have any authority to per se get involved in it because it had not come to the agenda. It wasn't in my ward. Not to say that I'm not concerned about things that go on in other wards, but it was pretty much on the administrative and but this became an issue that came to the council. And I know we'll talk more about it. So just kind of want everybody to get an idea how things work. There are some decisions that will never come to council that'll just be handled with the city manager. It may be the city manager and a council member or or staff. And so that's how this began. But then it escalated because as the word got out about this particular decision, members of the community were very, very concerned, and rightfully so. So hopefully that's a little premise to where we're going today.
That makes sense. And thank you for explaining that because I feel like a lot of people don't really know how local government operates, even their own local governments. And I always tell people that it is so important to be knowledgeable and up to date on what's going on in your own community because those are the decisions that directly impact you the most in your everyday life. So thank you for even spelling that out. I appreciate that. So I guess before we can dive too deeply into things, I just wanted to give an opportunity for you to ask me some questions. I want this to be, a conversation, like no, not too much pressure or anything. And so if you had any questions for me, just ask away.
Yeah, well, I'm always interested because you're young and you're doing some fantastic things. I met you a couple of years ago when we had a Christmas parade, and I'm not going to say your age, but you're just a little 2 years older now. What is it that got you involved or interested in rock climbing? Just kind of wonder how did you get started?
Lord, uh, so long ago, right?
Oh yeah,
Well,
yeah, yeah.
well, all those years ago, I think I just liked to climb things. I just climbed everything I had no business. And I always got in trouble. I got many whoopings as a kid for being on top of things I had no business being on top of. And eventually my mom got tired and started looking for activities for me to get into. And one that was recommended to her was rock climbing. So she brought me to the gym and she begged the man at the front desk to get me into a sport to channel her ADHD kid's energy into. And, it just was love at first sight. Ever since I've entered a climbing gym, I don't think I've left, and I've just taken it from there. So my story is not that unfamiliar from a lot of kids. You get in trouble for it and then it becomes a passion.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting, and I want to just give your mom kudos because she saw you have this energy, but she found a sport that related to what you were doing. I mean, she didn't throw you into football or ice skating or hockey. She saw that you like to climb, and
Yeah.
this was a sport that was available. I mean, a lot of us as parents don't, except we're just trying to find something to get that child's energy. But she saw that there was something. This is what I'm thinking as a parent, because I had a son that used to
Hmm.
hit the pots. Is he any pot he found, he'd get a spoon and he'd just be banging, banging, banging. So of course, by the time before he could basically, by the time he was walking, he was playing the drums. But being
Hmm.
able to identify something for you to do, and that's where I think a lot of times, the being able to have access to information, meaning your mother knew that rock climbing existed, and found a sport that she felt would have.
That's the interesting part. She didn't know it
Oh, she
existed.
didn't
Someone had to
know.
tell her. No, like
Wow.
a lady gave a sticky note to her and told her that she should try going to the local climbing gym. It was very much by chance. It was like a situation of happenstance. But I mean, I'm very glad that that happened because I mean, it's the career that I have today. So like, I'm forever grateful for whoever that was. But yeah,
Okay.
you got to just follow the passion of your kids. We tried
Yeah.
all the sports, the basketball, football, soccer,
Okay.
out tennis. I mean, and I wasn't bad at them, but at the end of the season, I always went right back to climbing, and eventually my
Okay.
mom got the hint. So,
Well, then that says that we need more information. We need to know, and I think that our community, we're locked in just a few sports that we happen to hear about or see on television or things that may be offered at school. But we really, and rock climbing is one of those opportunities that a lot of people are not familiar that this is a professional. You can become a professional at this. This is
right.
not just something for you to do when you go to Dick's Sporting Goods or you're on the cruise and there's a rock climbing wall, but it's a sport. I have one more question for you, and I know you want to talk to me about things. What is it that
Yeah,
got
all
you
good.
to the point that you wanted to build a rock climbing wall here in the city of College Park?
Well, I think for me, it was a combination of personal experiences and also understanding the largest barriers to entry for people of color within the climbing industry and the outdoor industry at large, really. Because all through growing up, I mean, my mother was a single parent on a teacher salary, and we had no prior friends or entry into the culture of climbing. And so getting into it was really difficult. It's an expensive sport, equipment's expensive. National parks or outdoor areas can be pretty far away and hard to access, especially when you work a 9 to 5. And we had a lot of issues even in the outdoors with people stigmatizing me and me being afraid of the outdoors because of what is represented for people of color for a long time. And so I think growing up in the sport and having so many people who were just fortunate enough to give me a chance to help me get to the next level, whether it was through a financial contribution or free coaching and training or something, it took a village and I made it, but that's a really big reason why I was one of few who've ever made it through those barriers because it takes a lot of luck. And I wanted to take the luck out of that equation for the next generation of color of climbers of color. So I created Climate for Change, I think 6 months before we even finished the project with Atlanta. And the whole point is just making climbing more accessible and affordable for communities of color and destigmatizing the sport in the best way I knew how, which is showing up and being there as a Black person in climbing who's made it. And so building that climbing wall next to Gabi Road and having it in College Park was really a big step in making the sport a lot more accessible for people who would have never thought that climbing was an option for them.
Mm. Wow. And I guess choosing College Park of all places, being a community, a city that is 90, probably more than 90, a little bit over 90% people, Black and brown people. I think that we was a great location I can see, and specifically on Godby Road. So, and is that where the decision to put it where you put it in College Park, was that based on that as well?
100%. We made sure because I wanted it to be walking distance from communities that needed it. I felt like doing it in an area that's predominantly Black, that is low income and may not have like the car access or the access that a lot of people might have. I thought that that was a really good sticking point to put it in that community because once kids get into it and they fall in love with the sport through a wall like this, then we work with the city, provide free transportation to the local climbing gym chains, and they provide after-school programming or allow them to become part of the climbing teams and really get them a foot in the door of the sport in the community.
Mm. Well, thank you, Kai. Thank you for coming to College Park.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm excited about the work we've done. I think that's a really good segue into my next question too, which is the fact that this rock wall in general has been a hot topic in your city and the community and the media at large. And so I just wanted to know what your opinion was of rock climbing and this rock wall, and if you had any reservations or concerns that you wanted to talk about.
Well, I was very active in the city in 2020 when the rock wall, I guess, was envisioned. I wasn't necessarily on the council, but I was involved in a nonprofit and we did a lot of projects out of the Tracy Wyatt, even though you had the pandemic going. We were still delivering food to people from the Wyatt. We actually had food deliveries made to the Wyatt Center during the pandemic, and then we would distribute it to throughout the community. I thought that I thought it was a great idea when it was put in. I didn't know the background of how we got it here, but I was aware of it, and I think that it was a great project. And I was a little surprised when it became an issue in the city, and did not know why there was a some type of a I don't know what you want to call it, decision or the thought to take it down. So yeah, I was concerned, and I had expressed my concerns to Councilwoman Arnold, but again, at that time it was an administrative hand. So not to say, like I said, in terms of legally, I can't do anything with a lot of things in this city until it comes on the agenda and it's up for a vote. But I did speak to the councilwoman and I was trying to get some understanding. And the understanding that I came away with that maybe there was some concerns about safety for the wall. And I think it just kind of started with that, well, let's find out, is it safety? Then later on, the meeting on May 6th, which I'm sure you're going to ask me about that. By that time, when it came to the agenda, we were looking at the agenda item was talking about relocating the wall because apparently the councilwoman did not want that. Maybe she didn't want what she considered to be a liability. I don't know the real reasons actually to be there, but I was like, hey, my folk want it. Bring it over to me, bring it over to one of the two rec centers that we have. But then we began to find out that that was a little bit easier said than it would be to be done. So yeah, and it just became one thing after the next, community really beginning enraged about it, and spiraled into some really negative feedback coming out of a community that should be very supportive of recreational activities that are for all of our youth, not just our Black and brown, but everybody.
Yeah, I'm really glad to have that context too, because the day before that May 6th vote, I actually spoke to you on the phone about your stance on the wall, and I remember you speaking really glowingly about the project, the wall, and my contribution to the community. And the next day, when it came time to deliberate on the wall, unfortunately, you weren't present, and so I was curious to hear from your perspective, like what was going through your head on that day and what happened, and if you had any additional insight you wanted to include.
Yeah, I sustained a physical injury actually before the a couple of, well, maybe 36 hours before that, on Saturday evening, and it just continued to escalate. So I was actually at the orthopedic surgeon on May 6th, the morning of May 6th. And but I had studied my packet and you and I had spoken and on May 5th. And I was ready. I was ready to. I had spoken to several residents. I think that one thing that I've learned since I've been on council is that one person, even though I may be set to represent my folks, that I am not the one that I have to hear from my people. And so I had members of the community that have reached out to me because again, if members of the community were saying we can't stand it, take it down, well, that's a whole different thing. But I wasn't hearing that. I heard some people just didn't care, but the ones that were making their voices heard the most cared, and then was also the consideration of moving it. I started getting information that it would not, we could not, if it was taken down, it could not be replaced and be as safe as it would be. There would be some issues with that. But then also the issue became in my two recreation centers, where would we put it? It's the size of the wall, the height of the wall. So, with those concerns, I was prepared to come into that meeting and say, hey, let's just leave it where it is. Because that's what the agenda item was, to relocate the wall. Now, I'm in the meeting, and I came in the meeting. And by the time we started that meeting, I was having pain, very, very serious pain. The injection that I received had worn off. And well, I was looking so bad that the city attorney said, you need to, let's get the city manager to give you and I know I probably shouldn't tell this story, it makes it sound bad, but I had to take a painkiller. The pain was terrible. And I reached a point with the pain, the level of pain not going away like I needed to, but it was impairing my decision-making capacity. And the agenda, the discussion on the item changed. It went from what I was prepared to do in my sleep to now a discussion about empowering the city. And like I said, I can tell you what the understanding I have now, but then it was really not clear. And if you watch that video, I actually said, I'm having a little bit of difficulty here right now because the discussion, the deliberation began to change from what I was prepared to argue in my condition to me not following through exactly where we were going, and it just didn't seem right. It didn't feel right, and I didn't feel right. So I did leave while that discussion was going on, and I regret that I did. But at the same time, I didn't want to be up there and vote in a direction that I did not understand and that I could not fully comprehend. I felt like I owe my residents better than that. And you and I had spoken, and I didn't want to make a decision without being clear. And I know I could have tabled it, but at that moment, you're not thinking like that. I'm just thinking that everything is just going around in my head now. I'm not following where we are. I'm in pain. I need to get out of here. They're dragging this thing on. I didn't know how much longer the conversation was going to go on. So that's what happened that night. And am I proud of it? No. But yeah. So I guess that's the answer. I don't know if you have any more things you wanted to deal with on that.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you for, I mean, standing up for this and even hearing it out. And I hope we get another opportunity to talk on the issue. Because since that council meeting, a lot has happened.
Mhm.
And at the most recent council meeting, we had Councilman Gay who spoke up about the wall, and he vowed to reverse his vote on the wall immediately. And I just wanted to know what your thoughts were on that and what we can look forward to in regards to a new vote or on the fate of this wall, possibly.
Well, again, I never voted in favor of giving the city manager the ability to do an investigation and empowering him to spend up to $60,000. So that was not my vote. That's not how I would have voted. How had I been in my clarity of mind at that time as well. So what I did a couple of days later, once I was back to Jamel, started communicating with the city manager about my concerns about this agenda item. And of course, then Councilman Gay, to my surprise, at the next meeting, actually had expressed his concerns about it. My thing with the city manager, my immediate conversation with the city manager was, don't do a thing with that wall, don't touch that wall, without coming back to the council. At this point, this is a community. I don't care if you can do it for less than $10,000. At this point, this is a community issue. And he might be able, and he could do it for 60,000. They empowered him to do it for 60,000. I don't care what it costs. Bring it back to the council. Let us have another discussion on this. So that's where I was waiting for them to complete whatever the investigation was. We were getting a little bit of information on how that was going, and I was going to wait out to see what those findings were, which I do kind of have an idea even now. But when Councilman Gay said what he said, I was like, there we go, boom, and I knew what direction I was going to take. There's certain things that just don't make sense. And to me, this was one of them. So the way his interaction with the councilwoman that night, yeah, I think that could have been done a lot differently. But the point that he was making about the wall, and where he felt, now he has his reasoning, but my reasoning never changed. And my reasoning has always been, I don't see the sense in the wall being taken down. And I definitely don't see the sense of us not having a rock climbing wall. Like I said, if it was going to be taken down, I wanted it to be preserved and remain in College Park. So,
Mhm.
and those are the only feelings I've ever had regarding the wall. Either preserve it and move it where it can be used, or leave it where it is. Now I have a couple of more thoughts as well. And where I'm at now with the wall is, I'd like to see it, of course, remain. I think the concerns that we have is maybe we just need to address how we have been operating the wall itself. I think one good thing that has come out of all of the chaos around us is that we realize that this is a sport. It is a sport that gives an option, an alternative to our youth that have athletic ability and persons like yourself. And I think that as an inclusive community, we need to be inclusive and diverse in our sports programming as well. Not only that, it's brought attention to us on a national level. And I'm hoping that we'll get some additional support for additional programming. I'm hoping that where we did not have a whole bunch of going on, of course, the wall was built during the COVID pandemic where people weren't even coming in contact with each other. So you can't really look back to the history of how the last few years have gone in terms of how many people have used the wall. We haven't had any medical issues that have arisen from the use or any dangerous situations that have come. So, but I think that what we need to do now is just revisit the wall itself, look at some additional programming, make it, do some additional marketing. You and I have talked about even I think it's called the ballets or whatever, maybe looking at where we can have it where the wall is operational 12 months of the year. And we don't, because when those, am I saying it right? So when they come down and they have to be
The
serviced,
audible is, yep.
yeah, okay, right. The audible A's. Okay. They have to be serviced. So what can we do to keep the program going? And then I even have well, every sport under the sun has a season. So my other thing was, or do we market the wall for a particular season, a particular 6 months of the year? Just looking at the options that we have. But I think what we have learned through this is that this is definitely a sport worth having and embellishing in the city of College Park. This is something that maybe we haven't done as well as we could have done, and we can do better by offering, like I said, additional programming, getting city staff or persons trained, bringing on consultants on a regular basis to make sure that this, because from what I'm hearing from you, also is we want, this is something that somebody told your mom about, and a lot of folks don't know about it. So we need to market it. We need to get the word out. We need to let it be known that we have this wall, but we also need to protect it. We need to build upon it, and we need to make sure that we expose our youth to this amazing opportunity.
I agree. And thank you for speaking on that and speaking so positively of the project. I know one of the council meetings, someone made the statement that Black people don't climb. And I found that really interesting because statistically, he's correct. A lot of Black people don't climb. A lot of Black people also don't swim. A lot of Black people also think they're not good at math. And I think that those stereotypes, they come from a place at one point in which we were gatekept from those options, but we don't have to continue those cycles and pigeonhole ourselves to specific activities. I feel like we have to be able to break those generational cycles and curses and be able to open up the options that are available to us as people. And so I really wanted to just gift this wall to the community and create this programming as a whole because I wanted more options for the community. I wanted to help break down those barriers and destigmatize activities that aren't for Black people and make it so that we can be in any range in any industry or opportunity that we want to if we have the passion for it. So I'm happy to hear that it seems like you resonate with that vision and support it. So thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. And just to kind of piggyback on your Black people comments, there's a lot of things that even 20, 30 years ago, Black people weren't exposed to, but someone opened a door for us. I grew up across the street from Shirley Chisholm, and that was back in the 70s when she ran for president. She was the first Black woman Congress. Black women weren't in Congress back in those days. Okay. So, there's a lot of things that we have not had access to because it's just because we haven't had the opportunity. We haven't had the information. We haven't had somebody open the door. And I want to thank you for opening the door to us in College Park for this. You're a brave young man, and you have my support. I look at you as a son, but I also look at you as a forerunner for many persons that will have this opportunity to do something that they never considered, something that maybe we weren't brought to the table, something that people thought Black folk don't do, that Black people will do now and in the future. So I just want to say thank you, Kai, for everything that you have done. Thank you for being strong for this through this. And also I think I've told you before, don't take this personal. This had nothing to do, in my opinion, with you. I think it's just, the stuff that happens and stuff that happens. So
Appreciate that. I
thank you for
appreciate
everything
that.
you've done. Yeah. Mhm.
Thank you. Okay, well, I have one final question, and that is, do you think that we could get you to climb on the wall?
Absolutely. Now, I haven't done a rock climbing in a while, but I began to think about it. I said, I have rock climbed in a few places. So, yes. So, once we get the audible and everything straightened out, I'll be one of the first people climbing the wall.
I have to ask, and that was a better answer than I expected. A lot of people suggest like we should just teach them how to climb, and I was like, well, maybe we could start one council person at a time.
That's right. That's exactly. And this is like, this is to me, this is the easy breezy part. I mean, you're like doing the serious rock climbing out there now as a professional. So to anybody listening to this, it's not that hard on the wall. You're going to have help, you're going to have assistance, you're going to have a belt around it, you're going to be okay. So it is definitely something worth coming out, trying out, and getting your children involved in.
Awesome. Okay, well, that's all the questions I had. I don't know if you have any for me or anything else you want to talk about, but I'm just happy that we've been able to have this conversation and that we have your support in keeping this program where it is. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you again. Thanks for having me, and looking forward to doing some stuff with this wall, with our rock climbing wall.
100%.